Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for listening to Mr. Slackson's video on these Algebra 2 7.4 notes. All right, we're talking about inverses today, all right? And inverses are actually kind of a little bit easy, I would say, to find what these inverses are. And we're going to talk about what that is and how to get those today. And it's just kind of one quick step, and then it's just going back to your regular algebra solving rules. All right, so essential question today is how do I find inverses of functions? How do I find an inverse of a function? All right, so a relation, and we've talked about this in class, a relation is mapping the inputs onto the outputs. All right, we've talked about that. That's what most of all you see. But now an inverse that we're talking about today goes backwards the other way. It maps the outputs back onto their original inputs. It goes kind of backwards the other way. Here's really the main thing, and you need to highlight this. This is really all we're going to do today, is we are going to find the inverse by switching the roles of x and y. So we're going to switch the x and the y values, and then we're going to solve for our new y, if possible. All right. So that's really the main thing that we need to do. So to find an inverse of y equals negative 3x plus 6, I need to switch the values of x and y, and then solve for y. So instead of writing y, I'm going to write x equals negative 3y plus 6. So switch x and y. All right, so now I switch the x and the y. Now I can go through and solve for my y. So I can subtract the 6 to both sides. So now I have x minus 6 is equal to negative 3y. All right, divide by that negative 3, divide by the negative 3. I kind of ran out of room here, so let's flip on up here. If I actually just look through these guys, this one is going to be y equals what? Negative 1/3 x. And then negative 6 divided by negative 3 is going to be positive 2. And I lost my word here again. So this is going to be positive 2 here. And that's my inverse. All right, so that is the inverse of that function that we were given. All right, the next one gets a little bit tougher because it's got the squared in there. All right, and don't be afraid of the squared. You still have to switch the values of x and y. So I have x equals. Ooh, I switched to my red, but it's not writing in red. Y plus 3 squared plus 6. All right. So now to go through here and solve for this y, I have to subtract the 6. So I have x minus 6 is equal to y plus 3 squared. All right. Now you have to get rid of this squared. All right. And where did it go? Come back. It's thinking. My word likes to think, apparently. All right, so now we just have to go through and solve for that y. Here we go. I think it's loading with us here. So now to get rid of this squared up here, I have to take the square root of both sides. So I can take the square root. So now I have the square root of x minus 6 is equal to now just y plus 3. And then I subtract that 3 to both sides. And then be careful here. Here's the common mistake is that people try to put that 3 underneath that square root. And it doesn't. All right, so let's flip this guy up here. Now I have y just left on that side. And I have the square root of x minus 6. But then that minus 3, you have to make it clear that it's outside that. It's not underneath that radical. So it's just the square root of x minus 6 minus 3. All right, awesome. So this last one is just verifying that these guys are inverses. And it's kind of cool how this works. And it says right here, if f of g of x and g of f of x equal x, if they both do, then they are inverses of each other. All right, so it says verify that these guys are inverses. So first I have to find f of g of x. So let's just call this second one g of x. They denote this f to the negative 1 power. That's kind of like inverses in math. That's kind of what we call that. All right, so let's just call that one g of x for now. This one's already f of x. So I'm going to find f of g of x first. All right, so that means I'm going to take my g of x and I'm going to plug it in for all of my x's. So I'm going to take this guy right here. I'm going to plug it into my x for f of x. All right, so this guy is equal to what? Negative 3 times negative 1/3 x plus 2 plus 6 here. All right. Now if I distribute this in here, negative 3 times negative 1/3 is going to be 1x minus 6 and then plus 6 still. Now 1x minus 6 plus 6, these guys combine to just make x, and that's exactly what we want. F of x is equal to x, so check so far. All right, if you get just an x, that's what you want. All right, now it goes backwards the other way. We need to find g of f of x. So now I plug in my f of x, which is negative 3x plus 6. I plug that in for my x in g of x. All right, so here I have negative 1/3 times not just x. I'm going to plug in negative 3x plus 6. And then I still have that plus 2 at the end. Don't forget that plus 2 at the end. All right, so here we go. I go through and I have negative 1/3 times negative 3 is going to be a positive 1x. Negative 1/3 times 6 is going to be a negative 2, and then I have that plus 2. So notice here I get 1x, negative 2, and positive 2 cancel out. So this is a check. That's exactly what I want. So yes, they are inverses. All right, awesome. Perfect. So inverses, the main thing that you're probably going to write in your summary here is that, hey, you just have to switch those x and the y's, and then you have to solve for that new y. All right, so please come find me if you have any questions. That finishes up these 7.4 notes. We will talk to you later.